How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
The McDonald's Snack Wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch Snack Wrap. Spicy Snack Wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack Wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome to the New Books Network.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Burned by Books. Here you'll find interviews with writers you already love, like Jennifer Egan and Rebecca Mackay, mixed in with up-and-coming voices like Alexandra Kleeman and Rumaan Alam. You'll find us wherever you listen to podcasts, but check out previous episodes at burnedbybooks.com and on Instagram and Twitter at burnedbybooks. Let's start the show. The beautiful cover of Mary Jones's story collection, The Goodbye Process, is a bit of a feint. The exquisitely drawn espresso maker and 2 cups of rich coffee speak of beginnings and intimate conversations. But this is, at its heart, a collection that lives in the endings of things. The end of lives from sickness and age, the end of romance, the end of friendship and intimacy, the end of contentment, and equally the end of mourning. Lest that turn you away from these gem-like wonders, many of which are a page or a paragraph only in size, there is such heart and warmth and humor inside this collection, even when optimism is in short supply. For these stories are rich with real emotions, painful sometimes, but always vibrantly real. Sisters spray a grieving woman with water guns, only to return to her decade later with an apology. A real estate agent slowly undoes layer upon layer of plastic surgery to see if he has lost his authentic self. A professional mourner connects a man with a deep history of those who have lost and have felt that loss fully. And a trivial bit of shoplifting by friends nearly ends in a horrible violation. These are just a taste of the endlessly clever stories in the Goodbye Process. In crafting these flashes of fiction, Mary Jones has adventured into the limits of that form, practicing with time compression and linguistic rug pulling, and an audacious love for dialogue that feels urgent and real down to the level of sound. I was shocked by my reactions to these stories, emotive and intellectual, and I know you will love them. Mary Jones's work has appeared in Electric Literature's recommended reading, Subtropics, EPOCH, and the Best American Essays, and has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. The Goodbye Process is a national bestseller. Originally from upstate New York, she lives in Los Angeles. Welcome to Burned by Books, Mary Jones.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, these stories were such a pleasure. I mean, in a way, they fly by, but they hold you. They really stay with you. They range in length, but the majority in the collection are something between flash fiction and a very short story. What's attractive about that kind of compression? And do you know in advance when you're writing something that it's going to be this short, or does it emerge that way in the process?
I love compression. I love stories that sort of pack a punch and get to the point quickly. I think I have a shortish attention span, so I don't like to read and read, and I sort of admire that in my own reading, and then I think it sort of just happens in my writing. I don't think I know going into it how long a story's going to be. sometimes I know when I reach the ending, I usually have sort of a visceral response and maybe get the chills or something when I reach the end of something. And sometimes I'm surprised to find that happens very quickly. Sometimes, it's a much longer process.
Yeah, they feel often as though they have this organic sensibility to them, as if they were exactly the right shape they were supposed to be. And so I guess it's when you come to the ending and know it's the right way, that's, I guess, what I'm feeling as a reader, that organic sense that it's supposed to be done.
Oh, great. I'm glad they feel that way.
One of the things I love about these stories is your play with the concentration and compression of time, and the hints you lay at our feet about whole lives lived in the past or future of these story worlds. For example, in Royalty, a story of a dog seemingly grieving for a woman's absent partner, it turns very suddenly to trips to London and Paris with the dog in tow, where Parisian bistros would serve her filet mignon under the table. There's this whole life that has happened before we meet the character, and it is a life of magnificent experiences that we mostly never see. Can you talk about the specifics of this story's use of that sort of time compression, but also your general sense of the short story as a form for playing with that?
For that specific story, yeah, I like how, through seeing a little glimpse of their relationship with the dog, you have an understanding of what their life, the husband and wife in that story, what their life was like. Yeah, for time in fiction, I like flash forwards. I think that's something that I've come to admire. I think I don't know. I think it's a less conscious choice for me. The time, I think it's just it's something that just happens naturally.
Yeah, and do you think the short story form is a particular genre that's better with that? So because I'm thinking about flash forwards in novels and things like that, but there's something about the story form where it does more work, and it has to do with just the fact that you have less time, I think.
Yeah, I think stories are so compressed that I think a jump in time is, feels more significant and substantial in a short story than it does in a novel where you might be jumping around, a lot.
These stories are by and large upstate New York based. And very particularly, they are in Utica and Syracuse and Rome, some of the cities of what we might generally call the upper central New York region. I know you're from this area, but what called you back to write about these places? And what are the qualities of place and culture that pulled you to them as a writer?
Yes, I'm from Utica, New York. And I think, for whatever reason, when I sit down to write, that's just the place that comes to me. It's kind of just, it's just kind of what I see when I'm using my imagination. I know those towns so well. I feel like I've been gone for a long time and I've lived in a lot of other places, but I feel like I can still recall all the little, corners and turns and what the stores on the corners look like. And I just intimately know that place. And I also know those people. In a lot of cases, I grew up in a working class neighborhood, and in a lot of cases, I'm writing about working class characters. And I think it's just people whose struggles I know intimately and I care about deeply. And it's just something that comes up for me a lot when I write. It's just kind of been an important place for me. So I think a big part of the sense of place in the stories is the people in the place. And, and those are just people that I keep wanting to write about. Do you
find, now you live in Los Angeles, a very writerly place, and do you find yourself having, more interest in returning in story to the upstate New York because you have distance, because perhaps you can see it differently?
I think so. I mean, I think it's just endlessly interesting to me for whatever reason, in a way that I've been in Los Angeles for almost 20 years, but I kind of, in a way, I mean, Los Angeles is a distinctive place, but I don't feel like the place and the people are as distinctive as that place. Like, it's not sort of all one thing in the way that is,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. So I do find that I think the distance helped me see it more clearly. And I do find it's a place that I want to just keep returning to.
The title story, The Goodbye Process, is an intensely moving portrait of grief and seeking community as a form of healing. It's about a husband whose wife has died, and he has hired a professional mourner to aid in the funeral process. This is a very real position in some countries and cultures, notably in Southern Africa. But in this story, it feels out of place, and yet it opens up a conversation about how we are meant to find help in grief. What is the professional mourner doing here in this upstate story, and how is it connected to needing to a connection with others as we mourn?
I recently tried to think about where this professional mourner character came from. I think it just came from my imagination. I think I had the idea for the story started a long time ago. I was at a residency at the University of Arizona Poetry Center, and I was, locked in a room for a month writing. And this story started there. And I think I just had the idea for a funeral. It started with an idea for a funeral that goes bad, like something goes wrong. I had been at a funeral myself where like something went wrong, and there was kind of a feeling of everybody looking around at each other like, oh, this is not going well, like this shouldn't be happening, like something at this funeral. And so I had that idea in my head, and then I started writing this story, and I imagine, it was a while ago, but I imagine it started with just somebody very upset and maybe, weeping uncontrollably or something. And then I don't know, I somehow it evolved into a professional mourner, and I started researching that it's actually a real thing, as you said, and more prominent in some cultures and places. And I just, I kind of liked, to me, it kind of felt like a little bit surreal to have a professional mourner at the funeral. And I kind of like that. I kind of like when things feel a little bit off and slightly skewed. I think that's kind of how we feel when we're in a grieving situation. I think things feel a little strange. And so I liked that, and I embraced it, and I went with it. And this character came into the story, and I would say she's, I think it's less, it's less of a performance, I think we find as we go through the story, and she has these real emotions that we see. And I think that's sort of the surprise that happens in the story.
I don't know if you know the novel Ways of Dying by Zakesam Da, the South African writer.
No, I don't.
It's a wonderful novel, and it's about a professional mourner.
Oh.
And it's about a professional mourner at, sort of crosses the apartheid line, so pre and post apartheid, and what it means to mourn during those two different epochs of South African history.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I highly recommend it. You'll like it for lots of reasons, but it's a great novel.
Oh, that sounds great.
There's a good deal of sickness and loss in these stories. The goodbye process most often has to do with death and mourning. Could I get you to read one of the shortest and most devastating stories in the collection, Recess?
Sure. I think this probably is the shortest collection in the story, or the shortest story in the collection. Recess. My held hand is resting on her lap, and there's a breeze this afternoon. She's telling me how our son put Spider-Man Band-Aids on all of his old wounds. I watch her mouth, thinking of when she was younger, just mine, before any of this. She's always moved her mouth in that same funny way. We used to go to this place called the Frog Pond. All the rooms had frogs for decorations. In the black of night, the ceiling would glow with bright stars. In June, she starts chemotherapy. The doctors say I should be optimistic, but I don't feel particularly optimistic. We love knowing it will end. She stops talking, asks me what's wrong, and I tell her it's nothing. She leans closer. I meet her halfway. We kiss. We are locked in this moment of waiting, like children running wild at recess.
Thank you so much. That line, "we love knowing it will end," is a real gut punch that can be read in a lot of different ways. And I wonder how you think about phrases like that have to do so much work in a tiny microfiction like this. And maybe give us your reading of that particular line as well.
I think for this line, I think he's just coming to terms with his wife's potentially losing his wife. And I think he's sort of just coming to terms with that, sad reality that sometimes that is the case, right? So in terms of the lines doing a lot of work, I think it's, I never know which lines are going to do the work. Like I didn't know that was the line that's doing the work in that story. So I think everybody reads it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I try to be, I really am a big editor, and I try to really, cut down anything that doesn't need to be there in the sentences, in the paragraphs, in the stories. So I'm always refining. So I think in a short, very, very short piece like this, I think all the lines have to do a lot of work.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
One of my favorite stories is The Hexter Girls. It is loosely about a rather poor family whose daughters amuse themselves by shooting water guns at people from a hidden position and watching them react. One time, they hit a woman who, unbeknownst to them, has just lost her young son to an accident. This is another one of those stories with a massive time compression, but in this occasion, that compression gives us just the smallest window into the development of these girls into grown women with families who have learned to feel empathy to a kind of loss they simply could not understand as children. What was the genesis of this story, and why did you want to return to these girls as women?
Yeah, the genesis of this story is actually, somewhat close to my own life. My son did, in fact, used to spray people with water guns. And I don't know why we did it. We were bored. We were young, and
It seems classic.
yes,
Hijinks.
we were sort of pranksters. I grew up with 3 sisters, and we were sort of all close in age and pranksters. And so we did used to sort of sneak and spray people with water guns. And so of course, everything else in the story didn't actually happen, but that's where this idea came. Like, I guess I started thinking about, well, who were we spraying and what might they have been going through? And we weren't aware of that as children. We weren't thinking about that. But then I guess I just that's sort of what started me into the story. And then I think I needed the flash forward in this story because there's no way the kids could comprehend what she was going through, but as adults, then they had different things happen in their own lives that helped them understand. So I thought that was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I love that story. Likewise, the story Absences, but for very different reasons, has stayed with me. It's about a monster of a man bent on assaulting 2 teen girls. He fools them into his car, but on the drive to their violent destiny, one of them has a seizure, causing the man to freak out and dump them both from the car. The very thing that made that girl much of an outcast saved her life in a terrible irony. I guess I want to start by talking about violent men who shape some of the women's existences in these stories. But then I want to talk about how this story ends with the dissolution slowly of that friendship between the 2 girls. Perhaps the most unusual goodbye process.
So it does end with the dissolution of that friendship. I think it also, the narrator is changed by that experience. I think when I wrote that story, I was kind of thinking about compliance and what someone might go along with if it was something that came from an authority figure or somebody they perceived as an authority figure. And
They
I
think he's a policeman, right?
just kind of assume that he's a policeman, even though he never really says that quite. He never says it right out, but they just assume that. I mean, I guess he says he's going to take him to fill out paperwork or something. So they do just kind of go along with whatever he says to do. And I think I was interested in that. How far will somebody just go along with something, And then, I guess I think of this story as a story less about the friendship and more about the narrator and her father who has recently abandoned the family. And I think in the end, this sort of experience of, spoiler alert, going through this experience with this violent man and being treated the way she was by this man makes her see her father and his role in the family in a different way. And I think she comes to a different understanding about him. So.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the stories that I feel like you're really playing with the way in which we so often fail to offer ourselves love and compassion is Realtor. That's a story of a real estate agent who's had all these numerous plastic surgeries that have made him rather classically handsome, but erased much of his former visage. And he begins a relationship with a woman who asks him to return himself to his previous form. It ends with, in a sense, a violent rejection of that last reaching towards his original self. And I wonder if you talk about like this refusal to love and care for ourselves as we are.
Yeah, this story was a surprise for me. I think I had absolutely no idea where this story was going when I started writing it. I just had this idea. I mean, one thing that, is distinctive in Los Angeles as a place is luxury Los Angeles real estate agents who are just like a very good-looking bunch of people, very polished and put together. I mean, like nothing you've ever seen before. And so I kind of had this idea of sort of that kind of character in my head. And I don't know, I just kept going in unexpected directions. And, it's a story that has multiple points of view. And it's not something I normally do in my short fiction, but I felt like I needed it in this story. And I think he's just a very insecure person who, can't ultimately show his true self. So he, even though he does go through this process of undoing a lot of this plastic surgery that he's had, he still can't ultimately reveal his true self. In this relationship where he had total acceptance and, clearly from this woman, but just was not able to do it. Just could not get there, So.
Yeah, it's so devastating. And it ends in such a spectacle that you can't turn away from. Before I let you go, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you've been reading recently, and if you have things that you'd like to recommend to the listeners.
Sure. I recently read All Fours by Miranda July. Miranda July is one of my favorites. I love the space she occupies in terms of how surreal her work is. Like it's usually strange but possible. Like the things that are happening are very weird, but they could happen. And I really love that. Like there's no magic, but things just feel so strange. And that's something I really admire about her and admired about this book. And I also just found it really funny. And,
it's so funny. It's like laugh out loud.
I really was laughing out loud. I listened to it and she reads the audiobook and I have to listen.
Oh, oh, nice.
It's really so good. So that was one that I really loved. I recently discovered a writer, and I'm not sure if I'm going to say his name right, but it's Tyler Cook. I think he wrote a book called, a story collection called Thrillville, USA. And,
is it Koek?
Yes. It's Taylor, Koek, and it's Thrillville, USA. And I just found that collection stunning. I just was, sort of awestruck by his descriptions and his use of language. And, if anybody likes Dennis Johnson or even Raymond Carver, I think he's a great person to take a look at.
That's a recommendation.
Yeah, I loved it. I was amazed by it. And I loved Ling Ma's collection, Bliss Montage. It's another one I recently really liked, which is...
I'm teaching Severance right now, her novel.
Oh, I haven't read Severance, and it's on my list.
Oh my gosh, you have to read it.
Oh, good. I did love this collection. Some of the stories I think about all the time, and it's another one that I just want to read again. And
What's the title of the story collection again?
Bliss Montage. I think it won
Okay.
the story prize. I'm not sure, but it
Mhm.
was either a finalist or it won, and it was a wonderful collection. And then, I keep coming back to Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These. I've probably read it, I don't know how many times. I just cannot stop reading that book. I love it. I think it's a perfect book.
Wow.
There's some that I've loved recently.
It has been recommended by a number of guests, and I haven't read it. So I think
Oh, haven't
with
read it.
your
Yeah.
recommendation, I'm gonna have to really now
I
get it
envy
and
you
read
because I would love to experience it again for the first time. It was
Oh
that
my
good.
gosh.
It's just beautiful and it's so short. I think maybe it's like 120 pages or something, and it's almost like a long story, but it's just so powerful and moving and surprising. Such a
Wow.
great book. Yeah, I
Oh,
love it.
man.
It's probably my favorite book in a long time.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that goes straight to the top of the TBR
Oh, great.
pile.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Well, Mary, thanks for those recommendations. And I just can't say enough about the goodbye process. I just think it's a marvelous collection. And even though it's about difficult questions of loss, but I found myself kind of hopeful and oftentimes laughing. And, even when there are dark moments, there are things about it that just feel true to heart. And I'm so glad that it's been doing well selling, and I know the listeners to this podcast will love it.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. It's been so fun chatting with you.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you. Well, that's all from me for now. My thanks to Mary Jones for coming on to talk about her short story collection, The Goodbye Process. You can find links to purchase The Goodbye Process and all of Mary's recommended books at the website, burnedbybooks.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes, links to buy a podcast t-shirt, and ways to get in contact. As you listen, take a moment to rate the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Burned by Books.